Cool, looks like we've got a fair few people with us, so I think we'll probably kick off. So welcome to Retargeting 101. We've scheduled in about 45 minutes to an hour for the webinar today, but everyone who's registered and attends will receive the recording afterwards, so don't worry if you need to jump off at any point. And do submit questions throughout as well, and let us know if you can email us at Triptease if you're having any issues using the software or anything like that. I've just seen a question come in, will there be a recording? There will indeed be a recording. So I'm Lily, I'm one of the product marketing managers here at Triptease. I'm here with Scott, who is the kind of product lead on our new retargeting product, which we launched about a month ago at one of our direct booking summits. So we wanted to cover kind of a lot of the basics around this topic today. So we're by no means only talking about the Triptease solution, although we will cover that for people who are interested. But we wanted to talk through some of the kind of complicated terminology, the technology behind this, and give people an insight into why it's important. So yeah, do give us a shout if you have any questions throughout. We've got a section at the end for questions specifically, but I'll try and take a few as we go as well.
Great.
Cool. So if my slides will work. There we go. So yeah, just what we're going to cover today. Why OTAs are kind of strong players in this sphere. After that, kind of diving into the nuts and bolts of what retargeting is. We're going to be talking about what makes a successful strategy rather than just doing it. And then, like I said, we're going to cover off a little bit about our product as well. So Scott's going to be kind of, as he's been working on this with the engineers and that kind of thing over the last few months, he's got a really good insight into how this market works. All right, so Scott, maybe if you could kick us off by talking a little bit about why OTAs are at such an advantage.
Yeah, sure. So maybe just like framing up kind of what the opportunity is. So there's this stat that we learned when we were kind of researching the product earlier this year, which was about 9 in 10 people that actually make a booking on your hotel, regardless of which channel that comes through, will have at some point been on your hotel website. And we know that very few hotels have a direct booking kind of ratio of 90%. So what that means is that there's all these people that are landing on your hotel site, but somehow they're slipping through your fingers and they're being lost to, predominantly to the OTAs, right? Mm-hmm. And so that was really it was kind of this stat that kind of triggered our thinking of like, okay, wow, this is clearly a burning problem for hotels, mm-hmm. And something that we want to try and address. Mm-hmm. Like on top of that, if you think that actually of all the, for every 100 people that land on your hotel website, only a couple of those out of 100 or so will make a conversion in that first session. Mm-hmm. And actually, this is a stat from retargeting or retargeter.com. Probably within the travel industry, that amount is actually slightly lower, right? Because a hotel purchase is quite a high ticket, i.e. like a high value purchase. It's not, buying something really cheaply on Amazon that you can do with little consideration. So often these are multi-session events, meaning that the user is coming back to your hotel multiple times. Mm. And so I guess the thing that the OTAs are doing really well is they are able to track users, from right across their kind of purchasing funnel, from that very top phase of when a traveler is in market. They may be just thinking, okay, I know I want to go away. Maybe it's a business or a leisure trip, mm-hmm. But they're not exactly. Maybe with the business trip, that journey is slightly different. But if we take the leisure example, you might think, okay, which destination do I want to go to? And then as we move into the consideration phase, perhaps the users now, they know exactly the city they're going to go mm-hmm. to, they know the dates that they're going to stay. It's now a question of, okay, where do I want to, which hotels do I want to stay in, and where am I going to make that purchase? Mm-hmm. And at different points through this funnel, there are different types of marketing activity that both hotels and OTAs can do in order to try and pull that guest down the funnel and towards that point of conversion. Mm-hmm. And this requires tons and tons of understanding about each individual guest to really kind of really know what triggers you need in order to guide that user to that point of purchase. And that requires tons of data and experience and knowledge. And that's something that historically hotels have lacked because they haven't had the scale of data or perhaps the time, or the sophistication, right, to really deeply understand that. Because marketing, managers and distribution and revenue teams from hotels have all these different things that they're trying to do, and sometimes this isn't their core competency.
And I think often sometimes when we talk, as well as at Triptease, when we talk about when we're having conversations about conversion, it's very, and improving your conversion rate, right? It's very easy to slip into that kind of just talking about the single session, or talking about getting one user who started thinking about your hotel to the booking, and kind of, we almost, like you say, sometimes it's easy to skim over that fact that people book travel in very disjointed and asynchronous ways, right?
Exactly.
It's not all at the same time.
Yeah, and they're just in examples of the different types of campaigns that the OTAs are deploying, ultimately trying to take away our hotels' traffic and revenue, right? And they're using psychological tactics that, as they do on their platforms, really hammering home the message about price guarantees, or reasons why you should join their loyalty programs and things like this. So they're using all these different tactics, and they're constantly evaluating these and working out which are most effective. We'll talk a little bit about that later on.
Okay, so now we've got a bit of a sense for why this is important and why the OTAs are doing so much of it. I can't remember the stat off the top of my head, but it runs into the billions, right? What these guys are spending. So if you could just take us right back and explain to us what do we mean when we say retargeting?
Sure. So kind of trying to use that layman terms, a guest lands on the hotel website. They don't book in that first session, then they leave the website, and then when they're elsewhere on the internet, what retargeting enables you to do is to send that user an advert that encourages them to come back onto the site. So you're targeting them off-site, so hence retargeting. And yeah, that's quite simply it. And so really, it's about keeping your hotel top of mind and trying to ensure that once a user has left your site, perhaps they're thinking, okay, I'm considering a different hotel, or I'm thinking about staying at this hotel, but maybe I'm going to book it via another channel. What you want to do is make sure that they remember, okay, that the direct site is the best place to book. And so you really want to be emphasizing why that is.
So we often talk about, I think, that we often bemoan the fact, right, that guests might come to a hotel site, and then although you've had them there, they then go off and they book, even though they're still booking your hotel, so you're still getting some of that benefit. They do book it through another channel. And I think it's really good to think of this as a kind of way to intercept that, right? It's to intercept that move away from your channel, and to really reinforce some of those benefits that everyone's working really hard on reinforcing on their website.
And I guess, sorry, it's a really interesting challenge, because it's quite different to most kind of, if you think about kind of Google AdWords or meta search, or kind of more like higher funnel activity. These are people that have been on your website. And so if you think, going back to that, that purchasing funnel, these guys are relatively close to that point of conversion. They've already been on, perhaps they've been on your booking engine and made some searches. And so actually, and I think we've got some stats later on, it can be a really like a highly efficient marketing channel, because it's the users already have they're highly engaged, and they're quite aware of the brand already. So it's not like you have to reach really high up the funnel.
They haven't just Googled you once, right?
Exactly.
Cool. And I think sometimes, often I've seen in kind of researching and reading about retargeting and how it works, you can get lost in all sorts of different terminology, like DSP and demand side platform, what that means. So maybe if you could just, I think in this slide, talk around in very simple terms how we're reaching that traffic and showing those adverts.
Yeah, so it's one of the most fascinating kind of industries. It's incredibly complex, and there's loads of these different players, but ultimately what we want to do, and what a lot of other agencies are doing, is try to just act as an interface for the hotel. So it's just one person that you have to deal with, and they in turn manage this whole ecosystem behind. And really, if you think about when you as not as someone who's browsing the web, anytime you go on a web page where there's a space for an advert, we call that like a piece of inventory, or that's basically the supply. This is the slot where we could put an advert. When that web page is loading, in a fraction of a second, there's this incredibly complex transaction that's going on, and basically that's where we're trying to use all of this kind of like smart technology in order to make sure that we are putting ourselves in front of the right person at the right time.
Okay, so
Go on.
I'm Please, really
break
good
it down.
So you've got the box on, let's say it's the Forbes website.
Yes.
The sidebar, say,
yeah.
and it's blank. Well,
yeah.
you know, in this hypothetical term,
yeah.
it's blank, there's nothing in there.
Yeah.
Then the second someone's loading that page, a user,
yeah.
there's all these people,
yeah.
all these publishers.
Yeah, or advertisers.
Advertisers.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, sorry, advertisers.
Yeah, so Forbes is the publisher, and then
Forbes is the publisher.
Yeah.
All these different advertisers competing to have their content shown on that publisher.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And so in that like fraction of a second, what you're trying to do is make an assessment of who's this person,
yeah.
what's the website, and then you will be bidding against all these other different advertisers, and you know, and then there's this kind of auction process that decides which advert gets shown.
So you decide how, well, in an ideal world, you see who that user is, you decide how much you want them, and what level you're willing to bid.
Yeah, exactly. And how, like, you know, every different website and each different slot within that website is going to have a different level of like quality and how much you want to pay for that. You know, is it a big banner that appears on a really high quality website, or is it a tiny little box that appears on a very low quality website? And they're going to have different levels of, you're going to have different prices based on how impactful you think that advert's going to be. If it's not going to get noticed, if it's not going to get, you know, viewed, clicked, then you know, then it has a lower price.
Cool. And then the other thing I think that this would looking at with this slide is that it's not just that you're doing retargeting, you have access to everything by default, right? So maybe you could explain a little bit about, again, without getting too technical, the economics behind a wider reaching retargeting platform.
Sure. So there's each of these different publisher sites, which you can see on here, they will have kind of relationships or partnerships with different advertising networks. Now, or the ad exchanges, and so these are kind of players that sit in between the advertiser, so the hotel and the publisher, that are basically, I'll oversimplify this, but are basically, they aggregate kind of supply and demand, and they try to piece the two bits together. And there will be, and these different exchanges will have access to different like pools of inventory, and they'll be able to access them at different prices based on the relationships they have with a Forbes or whatever. And so one of the things, you know, that you should be asking if you're doing retargeting now, or if you're considering a retargeting provider, is, you know, which exchanges do you get access to, and how much inventory will that kind of allow you to tap into? Because you know, Google obviously has a huge reach, but actually, you know, doesn't represent all of the web, and there's actually lots of other supply out there that you're able to tap into that can be really economical.
Okay, and just to clarify then, so Google has their own one of these
networks? So Google has like a kind of the display network, which is their kind of all the sites that you get access to there. But there are clearly places, you know, like Facebook, for example, where Google can't reach.
Got it. Okay, cool, thanks. So, I mean, the first thing that came to my mind when we started talking about retargeting was Amazon, because I think they're a great example of, you put something in your basket and, you know, you see it on Facebook the next day or whatever. So yeah, maybe you could talk to us a little bit about, because I think sometimes there's maybe some doubt about the actual effectiveness of ads. But, you know, clearly big players are using it. So maybe you could talk a little bit around how much it drives, you know, incremental value.
Sure. So I think, you know, it's worth saying that different people use retargeting in different ways. And, you know, for some advertisers, their focus might just be around increasing brand recall, or it's about how do I drive up more activity on my website and just make sure that people are coming back. You know, for, let's say for an app, for example, it might be about, okay, how do I drive more signups, or it's how do I get more people to download a piece of content on your site. It's not, you know, just the hotels and just about driving sales. There's lots of different reasons why people might use retargeting. And, you know, it's not all about, you know, driving to that click. Sometimes it's just about, you know, reinforcing, you know, that we are a brand of quality, for example. But yeah, clearly it plays an enormous part in the kind of the advertising kind of like marketing mix. And I think, you know, as you can see here, you know, for someone like Amazon, it's something that they deploy pretty heavily. I don't have any stats on how much of their revenue comes from retargeting. But yeah, it's really meaningful for them. I think one thing that's kind of maybe one thing that's worth kind of talking about now. It's quite, the amount of people I've spoken to are like, yeah, but I never click on ads, and like, oh, and I hate retargeting ads because they always follow me around after I've made a purchase or something. So there's a couple of things there which maybe we could kind of unpack. And I guess the first thing of those is around this idea of like, oh, people never click ads, kind of thing, or people, I never really pay any attention to them. I see them and I'm just like, whatever. It's that, what's really exciting about this industry at the moment is the through the internet and through kind of really specific targeting that you can do, on the web that you can't do in a magazine, or if you think about historical kind of like media formats, about TV, you can have a rough sense with TV of, okay, these are the kind of people that are watching the show, but whereas on the internet you can say, I want to know people who've been on my website, who are on this website within the last 72 hours, and they have interests of such this and this, and this is their like gender and age, and this is their income, all these kinds of things you can piece together to make sure the adverts are super relevant to them. And what that means that, industry at large is seeing the click-through rates are increasing, massively, over the last few years. I think Facebook have seen a 300% increase in their click-through rate over the last few years. And that's a combination, I think, of the ads being more relevant, and also just people becoming a bit more like receptive to them and open to them. And if it's something that generally of interest to you, like I bought something, some clothes off Instagram the other day, it's very millennial, sorry. It does work. And,
no, I mean, I think Instagram shopping or anything like that is a really good example of how these kind of big companies are starting to, they're not just spraying ads at anyone. And kind of when I saw this quote, I was a bit, it's not what we normally hear, that, the association is, oh, if I see loads and loads of ads, I just get so annoyed. But actually, if they're really taking care to match the right content to the right person, then it's more about, I think, that bringing the content to the person who has expressed the intent.
And that's one thing just to point out. There's a term kind of in the industry called frequency cap, which is how many times. So you can basically restrict how often a user will see an advert. So you can say, only show this user 10 adverts, or maybe only show them 10 per week. And you can change that kind of thing to make sure that you're not kind of overexposing them and kind of frustrating them. And there's that sweet spot of showing them enough ads to make sure that they kind of have seen and interacted and clicked or viewed and then come back, versus showing them too many. And also, if you're showing them too many, it's perhaps frustrating, or detrimental to the relationship you have with that customer, but it's also, it costs you money, right? Because it doesn't come for free.
And then here as well, I was surprised when I saw this, because I think there's particularly, because potentially it's so hospitality specific, we talk a lot about meta search in this industry, when actually so what we're looking at here is the industry averages for these two forms of advertising. So if you could maybe talk us through why you think there's that difference.
Sure. So again, this comes down to that like funnel, and if you think about, again, the higher up you happen to reach, from, if you think about this, all marketing can almost starts like it lives in your hotel website, and then you're deploying it from there across the web. It's kind of a weird way to think about it, but the higher up you go, the less aware consumers are of you, and probably the more speculative it is, and so the more wasted ad dollars there are gonna be. And really, if you're reaching people right at the start of their kind of traveling journey, you might bring them onto your site, but they might not convert. So the kind of ROI is almost like not necessarily the right metric to use there. But thinking about those like lower funnel activities, we have meta search and retargeting. You can see that there's a kind of the 30-40% lift in the ROI that hotels can expect to get from retargeting. And that's a really like high value activity. It's very, very profitable.
So it's almost like the return's getting higher, the kind of more signals of intent we can tell.
Exactly right. And if someone has been on your site, they've made multiple searches, and then we see them again, we can start saying, okay, it's quite a high likelihood that this person's going to bid. And so we want to make sure that we put ourselves in front of that user.
Great. We're in a window by the road, and there's some noise coming from outside, so do let us know if that's putting anybody off, but we'll try and struggle through. Okay, so can't see any questions that have come through, but do keep letting us know. I think there's someone potentially asking about specific advertisers. So if you could maybe just clarify that question a little bit more, we'll be able to answer it. So just moving on to what makes a successful strategy. So let's start that discussion by talking about what doesn't make a successful strategy. And we touched on this a little bit earlier with the common complaints.
Yeah. So, as we were just talking about, one of the things that we've spoken to lots of hoteliers about, and you've probably experienced it if you've ever bought something online and then only to keep seeing that advert, is, there's some people in the market are not kind of managing it actively enough, or not setting up the right rules and parameters and the right targeting conditions. So one of the really, some of these are just a few simple examples of where kind of things can go wrong, but continuing to show someone adverts to encouraging them to buy a room after they bought a room, it's like clearly an obvious waste of money. There might be, but you can think, okay, how could I actually change the copy of that advert to make it more interesting? Maybe there's an upsell opportunity, or maybe it's just something to keep them engaged, and that point from conversion to in-stay.
So it's not only who they are, but also like what you're saying to them as well.
Exactly. Then maybe you're advertising to people for 30 days after they've left your site, and actually they've decided they no longer want to go to stay in New York, or they've actually booked up one of your competitor hotels. And so you need to use the kind of the signals that you see about that user to try and estimate when have they actually made that purchase. But just kind of even more simply than that is by being, and this is something we'll come on to a little bit as part of Triptease's solution, is because our scripts are sat across hotel websites, we're able to look at all of the search parameters that a user's made, and see that whenever they made a search, we know that quite a lot of people might be searching for the next 7 or 14 days. So we can make sure that after those search dates have passed, if we haven't seen another search, we can probably make an assumption, okay, well they've made their stay now. So that's another just obvious way. And, the easiest way to increase your return profile, and this is the same for any kind of marketing activity you do. The easiest way to increase your ROI is to just reduce the amount of stupid money, or the dumb money you're spending, right?
Exactly. There's a lot you can cut out before you can start to optimize.
Exactly. Right? Just look for those pockets, and and if any of you guys are managing retargeting or anything else yourself, whether that's meta search, your AdWords campaigns, just start by looking at breaking down and slicing and dicing your kind of data by country, or by device, or by different regions of that, and look, okay, are there countries where I'm spending a lot of money and generating no return? Just turn that, look at turning that channel off and see what happens to your return. So that's something you could do.
And I think another thing as well is that so the big OTAs, so Booking and Expedia, they've done such a good job of building up that kind of holistic customer view, right? Like they don't just think of customers as one-time only purchases, they think about that lifetime value, and applying the same logic, right? That's how they would approach retargeting strategy, in that they wouldn't give the same advert to someone who's run their first search to a user who's stayed 3 times in different locations and clearly has a certain type of holiday they like, right? So I think there are things to learn from that, in not just thinking of a one-time purchase.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. So this is another way to optimize strategy then, and we just touched on it there, in fact, is changing up the copy and how you present ads to people. So maybe you could talk through that.
Sure. So this is an example of one of the first experiments we did back in the summer, when we were in the kind of the beta trial of the product, and it's just a kind of a quick side-by-side to show you how just with the same message kind of copy and content, but just being animated a different way, how that can drive different results. We took bets on this in the team as to which one was going to win this test. So we put them head to head. So we did a kind of a split test, which means that for all of for every 100 people that leave your site that we want to target, we would show 50 people the ad on the left and 50 people the ad on the right. And just by doing that, we saw that the advert on the right actually had a much higher kind of engagement rate and ultimate conversion rate. And the one on the left makes quite a lot of people quite nauseous.
So this makes me question my skills as a marketer, because I thought it was going to be the one on the left.
I know, right? And that's the thing that's really interesting, and that's why again, thinking about what makes a kind of a successful solution, you need to have like a highly iterative and kind of test-driven kind of approach to this, and trying all these different kinds of things. And actually, should the book now button, should that be that size? Should it be larger? Should it be a different color? Should it come in from a different side? Should we have rooms from, or should it be rooms starting at? There's all these kind of optimizations that actually, by constantly testing and trying out different things, you're able to really kind of compound all those benefits and to make a much more performant ad. And actually, the more, one of the great things about acting as a kind of as an agency with loads of hotels, rather than just as us as an independent hotel, is that we're able to like apply all of those learnings that we can kind of aggregate from across our hotel network, and deploy them for the benefit of all of our hotels, in order to kind of win back more share from the OTAs.
See what works on like similar groups.
Exactly.
Great. So we've got, because as we said, we were going to try and really simplify things in this webinar. So these are 3 points that we've kind of come up with in terms of, you need to know this if you're going into this industry. So maybe you can talk through them all.
Sure. So the first up is the attribution window. So attribution, just to explain kind of really what that is, this is something, I guess, people think about it most in terms of digital marketing, but attribution has been important for, I don't know, however long advertising has been around, right? It's, if you put an advert up on a billboard, how sure can you be that that billboard has driven sales? If you think about a magazine or a TV advert, how do you know that any marketing activity you've done has driven the sale? And actually, within like digital marketing or e-commerce, it's actually never been easier to try and like close the loop, as you kind of call it. So you can link back kind of an advert to a purchase or whatever that, whether it's a download or an install.
I'm very familiar with trying to work out marketing attribution.
And so what the window is the length of time after which someone has interacted with an advert. So between when they've either seen or clicked the advert to when they make a purchase, when you're going to say, yeah, that was driven by that advert.
Got it.
And the thing that's really interesting here is it's really subjective, and there's no right or wrong answer, and it's something that the kind of every industry across digital marketing is really kind of like grappling with, and there's loads of really fierce debate about what is that right length of time, and after how long could you say, yeah, that was definitely from the advert, or actually maybe they've been influenced by something else.
Got it.
Now it's really, and and that also varies from hotel to hotel depending on the booking cycle, and if it's a business stay, you're probably gonna be less shopping around. You're probably just gonna go and book something. If it's
a luxury $20,000 booking,
right?
You're probably not gonna say.
You're gonna consult your family, or you're gonna consider lots of different places. And so there's lots of different reasons why there's no kind of right or wrong answer to the attribution window. Then within attribution, and I'm just kind of gonna stay on here for a bit because it's a really important topic. There's two kind of ways that you can attribute bookings. There's like what's called a view through attribution. That's where the user has had an impression or seen that advert, and then come back to the site and made a booking, and then there's a click through. And those are kind of the two ways that we think about that.
Great.
Next up is understanding which guests you're targeting. So if you're shopping around and you're thinking about, after this webinar, you're thinking, wow, if we're targeting someone I want to explore, speak to kind of whoever you're kind of considering, and find out a little bit about how they approach targeting guests. What information are they using to try and make sure that your spend is being deployed as kind of in an efficient way as possible. And then finally, it's around like what's the actual creative, what's the copy that you're showing those guests? How compelling is it? When you see it, is it eye-catching? Does it want to make you really come back to the site? Does it like evoke the emotion that you want that person to feel when they think about your property? Is it what are the 3 key reasons that people stay at your hotel? Is it calling out those things? And so there's different places will have different approaches to this, and you might have 2 different campaigns running, you might have 20, and it depends a lot on the size of the brand and how sophisticated you and your kind of agency are. But it's just try and get a sense of what works. And I would be encouraging anyone to ask their agencies to kind of test and try different things out and to iterate.
Definitely, yeah. And I think with all these three questions, if you are considering providers who work across multiple industries, so more kind of generic e-commerce providers, particularly hospitality is such a unique industry in its purchase type and purchase process, and also the different behaviors people display on websites. I think it's really worth thinking about whether they're able to take into account those different signals, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Great. So at this point, we are going to talk a little bit about the Triptease product that Scott's spent a long time building. But do keep sending in any questions you might have about retargeting in general, or indeed about the Triptease offering, and we'll try and answer as many of those as we can. So we kind of looked before at what not to do with the strategy. So we're hopefully doing what it's right to do. So maybe you could talk us through what those things are.
Yeah, sure. So maybe just taking actually the second one of those points first.
Yeah.
If you think about, we going back to that stat that we had at the start, which is, only 2% of people make a purchase in that first session. So if we just assume that that's correct for the average hotel, that means that for every 100 people that are landing on your site, there are 98 that leave.
Yeah.
Of those 98, really what we're trying to do is use kind of data science and what we know from, having been working with hotels, specifically for 5 or so years now, is of those 98 people that leave, who are the people that actually they have no intention of staying? And maybe they clicked on the link by accident, they bounced straight off. What we've seen that they were only on your website for 10 seconds before they've left.
They were looking at the restaurant.
Right. Let's say they were looking at the restaurant page.
Yeah.
So let's not bother wasting money sending those people any advert. So instantly, to this point of to improve ROI, the easiest thing you could do is just cut out that kind of spend. So that's something we're trying to do. If they were searching to stay for tonight and it's like an airport hotel, don't send them adverts in 3 days time. So that's one of the first things that we're doing, and is that tying all that data together that we have from our on-site products with the acquisition product. Then you're kind of left with however that X amount of people there, and then you can think about there's people who are considering your destination, but they're not sure which hotel they're going to stay in. Then there's people that are considering your hotel. They've said, this is I'm going to stay at this hotel, but maybe I'm going to take advantage of the Genius program that I'm on at Booking, or maybe I'm actually, I don't know, going to book via somewhere else online. And so these are the people that we're most interested in, because these are the kind of people who are slightly on the fence and kind of persuadable, and who we could influence through an advert in order to book by that direct channel.
They've chosen the hotel, now they're choosing where they buy it.
So it's about trying to bring them back to your hotel, and if they're definitely going to stay, we think they're going to stay, it's about making sure that it's on your channel, so that you don't have to pay those kind of hefty OTA commissions. So that's one of the first things we're doing. We're then combining that kind of study of like demographic and behavioral data. We're combining that with parity, because we know that parity is still the single most important factor. And this is one of the really interesting things about
sorry, just to clarify, what we talk about when we talk about parity.
Of course, parity is how does your price for that itinerary for the 1st of December for one night, how does that stack up versus the OTAs? Because we know that when you're being undercut, users are going on meta search sites more and more and more, and they're shopping around, and they know if there's a better price elsewhere, right? So we're using parity data, so that if we see that there's a search where you are being undercut and hotels are being undercut by OTAs, our global average about 20% of the time, I think. So for those 1 in 5 times, there's quite a high chance that they're going to find that cheaper price, and probably they're going to book elsewhere. So again, let's constrain that spend. Let's not send that user loads of ads to encourage them back onto your site if we know that there's actually a better option for them. Being frank. On the other end of the spectrum, when you have the cheapest price or when you're in parity, let's really shout about that, and let's make sure that we giving you the best chance to fight kind of toe to toe with the OTAs. And then, yeah, and really, I guess the point is here that this is doing this like, 24/7 across thousands of different websites for every single user. It's an incredibly hard thing to do. And so it requires a kind of a machine learning, we think requires a kind of machine learning based approach, because going into Google, for example, and going into Google Ads and tweaking all of these different kind of campaign levers and settings is incredibly bewildering. It's just not something that you can really, we think that you can do that well or that effectively.
No, even if you know your hotel and your guests better than anyone, which we do believe hoteliers do, right? It's that like you say, always on nature of this task, right? You have to update bids not only like every week, but it's every time someone makes a search, right? So no one can do that.
And it's like, even if you're like, well, I really understand the seasonality of my guests, and I know that in August I have to start this when I want to launch this campaign. But what you don't know is, what are the other hotels in your area doing? What are the OTAs doing? And how quickly can you react to their campaigns? That they, there might just be a big Trivago advert that's going to meet, TV advert that's going to start pulling loads of people into that system, and then your kind of your distribution mix changes. So it's just about being really kind of reactive or even proactive to those kinds of changes.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, so I think this is probably just an illustration, right, of what we're doing when we look at whether to bid for somebody or not.
Yeah. So this kind of this talks about this kind of internal metric that we refer to as like our guest value index, which ultimately is trying to, for every hotel, I kind of use this phrase, like has like its own like fingerprint, which is its unique set of what is its ideal customer, kind of what does it look like, and that might change, as we said, throughout the year. But so for each hotel, we're studying all of the different conversion events, looking at all of your lookers and bookers and all the people that don't book, to work out which kind of demographics and what user behavior can we see that will basically give us signal on whether that person we think is going to be worth paying for or worth is not worth paying for. And we're using that data to help us like drive our on-site kind of products, as well as deploying that through meta search. So we've been spending the last 12 months building this up for meta search, and we're now sharing all of those learnings with, in between all the different systems, and now pushing it into the retargeting space.
So actually then, how does that work? So if we are using the same system across meta search, which we also support, and retargeting, what do we do in the case that we see someone's interacted with both?
Yeah, sure. So I think that's something that's really exciting, is looking at, we can see when a user, how they've got to the website from looking at the referring URL. And then we can see, so that means, what website were they on before they landed on your site. And then, if we see, that was Google Meta, then we can say, this person already probably knows about prices. So maybe the kind of things we need to show them aren't necessarily about price, because they've already checked the price. Whereas maybe if they've come from TripAdvisor, we can say, they're more interested about kind of reviews and quality. Maybe we need to really reassure them that this is going to be a great place for them to stay. And so we can tie those kinds of things together to change the kind of the content of the ads and the kind of way in which we want to serve it to them.
That's an interesting idea, right? That you can almost kind of characterize those different, like you say, referral sites by kind of testing what works on people who come from them. So
exactly. Really exactly. And what are the parts of your site that they interact with? Are they looking at suites? Wow, maybe this is a higher value customer than not. Are they looking at the spa page? Maybe we serve them an ad that says, book direct and get $50 off a spa treatment. And it's, if you think about parity laws that are in place across most of the world, what are the incentives that you can encourage, in a place where ultimately there are loads of hotels and consumers are overwhelmed with this choice? What are the things that you can use to really stand out that are going to like catch their eye and draw and get their attention, bring them back to the site and get you to convert them in that moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So these are some examples then of Triptease ads. So as we were talking about before, those kind of blank spaces on websites like Forbes, these are kind of the different shapes they can take, right? And we're kind of trying to service all of those different opportunities.
Exactly. And so I think this is really And if this is just one type of advert, I just
Yeah.
mentioned, you might want to highlight direct booking benefits. You might want to call out the location if you're
Yeah.
right next to the Eiffel Tower,
Yeah.
or all these kind of things. But this is something that we're doing, or we're kind of experimenting with at the moment at Triptease, which brings together all of the different data assets that we have. And going back to this statement that I made earlier of, price is the most important thing that a user considers. We see in meta search that if you have the cheapest price, so you're kind of, or you're in line, I think the click-through rate increases by like 30 to 50%.
Right.
So versus when you're being undercut on Meta. So it has this really massive impact. And as we went going back to that example earlier of where Booking.com is saying best rate guarantee, best rate guarantee. What we want to do is give hotels the ability to say, hey, look, we're the same price as the OTA. You don't need to shop around there. Because we, in loads of studies, we see that inherently people want, to go direct, to the source. They don't really want to deal with middlemen. When they do want to use them, it's when hotels have a poor website that maybe they're not, like, it's difficult to input your car details. It's not optimized for mobile. That's a massive one. And so we're really just trying to surface the information that we think that user needs to see to get back.
So we're almost trying to reward the inherent trust of people in the hotel, right? We're trying to give them the experience that they're looking for.
Exactly.
Okay, great. And then here's the example of kind of what that journey, we talked about meta search and retargeting so far, but these are, as you could maybe talk through the different sections of the Triptease platform.
So Triptease has historically been just focused on these two kind of middle sections, as on the hotel website. And then about a year ago, we launched meta search, which is that kind of lower acquisition funnel activity, bringing them onto the site, capturing that brand intent. So meta search, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, is Google Hotel Ads, TripAdvisor, Trivago, Kayak, Skyscanner, places like that. And then what's kind of really cool is kind of this idea that we can deliver a consistent message to that user, throughout that journey. And if you, in terms of, if you think about the average users, I've read some amazing statistic the other day. It was like, I can't remember. It's like users see like thousands of adverts a day. If you think of everything from just the logo on the back of your phone to the name of each label in your clothes, all these different brands that are just kind of bombarding you. And actually, if you're able to create like kind of resonance and have, throughout that user's journey, if you can have consistent message right from top to bottom, you're going to I think develop a real sense of like familiarity and trust, and like, oh, this is the brand I feel like I know. And it's probably quite a powerful subconscious thing that I would love to do some more research on. So we have this, the idea here is that we have this consistent message before, during, and after the user's been on your site.
And I think also probably worth saying as well that kind of pricing information that we've talked about experimenting with, we wouldn't be looking to use that in a really static way, right? We'd be looking to kind of keep
absolutely. So you've got to make sure that the price is accurate and is dynamic and is and is ultimately relevant to the state that they want to perform.
It's like, say, consumers are smart, right?
Exactly.
They'll find it. Exactly. Great. Big punch of goal.
And just in terms of where in terms of the amount of volume that we think we can drive. So in meta search, our target is 10%, and in retargeting, we think we can drive another 10% of website of brand.com revenue. So that's kind of in terms of what it could mean for hotels.
Great. Cool. Well, thank you so much.
Cool.
Hopefully, we've learned a little bit more about retargeting. I know I definitely have. So we're now happy to go to a Q&A. Now that I put the slide up, I'll let you guys know. So in a couple of weeks' time, 2 weeks, I think, from today, but I'll check, we are hosting another retargeting webinar. And in that one, we're looking to go much deeper into the tech side of things, some of the things we kind of started looking at today. So Scott will be again on that one, along with our Chief Product Officer, and also an external expert that we've kind of definitely learned a lot from ourselves, who used to work at one of the kind of big companies.
So I'd imagine in that we'll be going a bit deeper into some stuff around like dynamic content optimization that we touched a little bit on, probably talking about some GDPR type stuff.
Lovely.
and lots of other more kind of in-depth topics for those who are kind of interested in this but want to go a bit deeper.
Great. So you can see the link down there, and I'll come back to it at the end. But for now, I guess if we take some questions. So I've seen a couple come in, so do keep submitting those. The first one, though, I think is someone who is currently already doing retargeting with Google, so using that display network that we talked about earlier. And they say that they're not really like actively managing it. So I guess how big is I think what they're trying to get to, right, is how big is the impact of then going to that kind of active management with something like Triptease?
It's you know, without knowing too much more, it's hard for me to say really accurately, but it kind of depends on what settings you're on. So Google has some of its own kind of like auto managed type settings where it's pulling a lot of these kinds of levers for you.
Okay.
I think, you know, clearly the big place that you don't get access to is social, you know, which is Facebook and Instagram. So that's a really big place, and that's growing very quickly. And then really it's actually about, there are other sources of inventory, and like the exact numbers really hard to pin down exactly of how much is left kind of on the table of these places where Google doesn't actually reach. And there might be places, or not might be, there are kind of deals that you know, agencies like Triptease and other people will do with say Forbes, for example, which is called like a kind of a direct deal, which is where you will say, I'm going to purchase X amount of slots on this, you know, it's often for the like premium inventory, and often you can get slightly like preferential rates because it's guaranteed for the publisher. They say, okay, well, I'm going to give, you know, 100,000 impressions away to Triptease, and so there's little things like that that basically allow you to tap into more of the market.
Got it.
And on top of that, there's just the things around, you know, like using parity and stuff like that, which you can't necessarily deploy through Google, and you know, reporting that, you know, linking all those different pieces together in the platform.
So we've had another question come in about so Triptease managing that retargeting directly, or kind of are we like, what's our kind of at a kind of high level, I guess, without losing me, what's the functionality behind Triptease retargeting?
Sure. So we basically have a partner that we use that's connected into all these different ad exchanges, and so they basically describe themselves like as a bidder as a service, and what they have is this really like flexible tool that enables us to basically deploy all of our kind of machine learning models and push them on a really frequent basis up to this partner, and then who then basically like disperses that like across the web. And so this is, you know, all the management is done by Triptease using all of our own kind of parity and audience kind of insight data. So really using all of that.
Great. Does Triptease retargeting have the capability to serve audiences different offer messaging based on rates or packages the user has looked at on the website? So segmenting the message we might send based on the rate or something someone's looked at.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is one of the things that we're really, you know, looking to explore more and more. So, you know, the product's been, you know, formally launched for a month now, and so, you know, we're still got, you know, lots of stuff that we're building, but, you know, absolutely we want to have, you know, ultimately if you had, you know, 20/20 vision of the world, there's the one best advert for every person for that moment in time, and it's about working out what that thing is that you need to tip that person to that point of conversion. And actually sometimes, you know, you might say, okay, this person, we might identify, okay, this person's still quite early on in the funnel, so we're not going to try and get them to convert right now. We're just going to maybe reinforce our brand, some of the reasons why this hotel is good, and we might say, because they're slightly higher up, we're not so sure if they're going to, we're going to pay slightly less for them. And by segmenting the users and really like, the more kind of like granular you go, the more relevant that ad's going to be, and hopefully more effective that will be.
Great. So we've had a couple of questions come in around kind of cost and return and that kind of thing. So what kind of, I don't know if we can give a kind of ballpark of the cost of retargeting, maybe relative to some other kind of marketing that people might be familiar with. And then a kind of follow-up question is, how long would you recommend running a campaign in order to optimize it most effectively?
Sure. So the cost it's really going to come down to the size of your hotel, how much traffic do you get, what's the revenue that's coming through brand.com. Again, if your hotel only has 100 people visiting it a month, there's only 100 people you can retarget. And if we think 2 of those are going to book in that first time, it's only 98 people you can retarget. So that's one of the kind of interesting things here. It's like there is a finite pool. So if we had a hotel, small independent said we're going to give you £1 million a month, there's only so much we can do with that.
Sorry, so you mean £1 million a month, not to us, but
sorry, in terms of the advertising spend. So I don't know if you whoever asked that question, we can send you, if you want to send us an email afterwards, or if you're a client of ours, we can have a look and then we can give you a better estimate. But really, it comes down to it's a kind of a percentage of how much revenue you get through, and you can kind of work backwards, right? And say, okay, if your brand.com revenue is X per month, and then we can kind of frame it where we say, okay, well, if we think we're going to deliver 10% of that, and then if we think we're going to get a return on ad spend of around this, you could kind of work out roughly what you need to put in. It's budgeting, it's hard, and there's often a bit of calibration that has to take place after kind of the first month or two.
I think that's a useful way to posit it though, right? That it's finite, dependent on your web traffic. So we can't. And if they had 2 hotels next door to each other and they have the same amount of web traffic, well, one had an ADR of $500 and one had one of $50. You might have more to be able to spend in order to acquire some of those higher value bookings. Got it.
In terms of the campaign duration, sure. So one of the, I guess, again, that depends slightly. So the more visitors and searches and conversions you have, the more signal you're able to get, and the more quickly you can get to a kind of a steer of how much is this helping me. If you only get a few conversions per month, retargeting might add a few more, or a fraction of a few more, and so it can be quite hard to see how much, the extent to which it's moving the needle. So again, that a little bit depends on how big is your hotel, but we would say for the average hotel, and kind of how we typically structuring our contracts here at Triptease, we'll have like a 3-month opt-out period, where over the time frame of around 90 days, I think that's a good chance to kind of get up and running, deploy the different creatives, give the kind of algorithms a chance to learn about your hotel, and to see the kind of returns that you can get, and then you can make an assessment at that point. One of the things we don't want to do is say, make a call after 7 days, because you probably haven't got to maturity.
Great, so I can see that we are almost at time. So I will finish by again reminding that we do have the follow-up webinar, where, like Scott says, we'll cover in lots more depth things like GDPR and everyone's favorite topic, and a bit more of the mechanics of how we're doing that content optimization, things like that. But do get in touch. So we'll obviously be sending around the recording, and you can get in touch with content@triptease.com anytime about the content, or to find out more, or like Scott said, to find out a little bit more about those kind of cost options for specific hotels. But otherwise, thank you all very much for your time. And thank you, Scott, as well.
Thank you all for dialing in.
Great, and you can find out more, of course, on the website. So we'll see you in 2 weeks.
All right.
Thanks.
See you guys soon.